Thanks so much from Paul there at Aviva Canada. It's great to have Aviva Canada represented at our events again. I hope you found that as interesting as I did. We are sticking with Marty Ellingsworth, Senior Analyst from Celent, for our next panel discussion now. Just a quick reminder, don't forget to join the community, and which will allow you to contact the other delegates and network during the course of the event. It's a great opportunity to connect with nearly 1,000 senior claims execs in the world of insurance. So Marty, I've already done your intro a couple of times, so I guess the audience know who you are now, but I know you're going to introduce our next panel, and hopefully we have lots of questions from the audience as well.
Well, thank you, Helen. Yes, audience, please do join in live. You can tell that the script is being read by all the panelists, and we'll hop over and take the questions, kind of in line if we can. I know that sometimes it's hard in live events to kind of juggle everything, but we do see audience questions come up, and we will try to break our rhythm and address them as they come in, because that's a big piece of the value we're bringing today. So again, as Helen said, I'm Marty Ellingsworth. You can look me up online and lurk me on LinkedIn. I'll save the extra minutes to introduce my panelists. They're going to be joining us by camera as they're introduced, and then we'll turn the mic around and let them introduce themselves. So with us today is Andy Cohen, President and COO of Snapsheet, Seth Simon, Senior Director of Insurance Operations for the Americas at CoverGenius, and Natalie Graham, Senior Vice President and Head of Claims at Mosaic Insurance. Natalie, can you, tell the audience a little bit about who you are, how you got to where you are, what's going on at Mosaic, and kind of what you're thinking you want to see happen in the industry in the next 6 to 12 months?
Well, that's a lot to cover off in a few short minutes, but hi, thanks, Marty. I'm Natalie Graham. As Marty said, I'm Head of Claims at Mosaic. I'm delighted to be here today. In terms of who I am, I joined Mosaic at the beginning of February. We are a startup specialty insurer. I suppose in terms of differentiators, we are an underwriting agency, but we eat our own cooking in the sense that we have our own wholly owned Lloyd's syndicate. So that means that we are different to the traditional underwriting agency in that we have security of capital, we have claims control, we will take the lead line in all risks that we underwrite, which means that, as I say, in a different way to the traditional underwriting agency, it is Mosaic that will be handling the claims. We are very much a specialty focused insurer. And we underwrite just 6 lines of business at the moment. That's financial lines, professional lines, cyber, reps and warranties, political violence and political risks. So I think to some extent, fairly different to what Seth and Andy. So I think we'll be bringing kind of different perspectives to this. Just very, very quickly, my background is I'm a lawyer by background. I worked in private practice for 10 years. I was then a claims manager at a Lloyd's syndicate for 7 years. And I also worked at Aon for 2.5 years, where I was head of claims for financial, professional and specialty. So I've seen the good, the bad and the ugly of the claims journey, and I plan to bring that to my role at Mosaic.
Excellent. All right, Seth.
Great. Thank you, Marty. I'm glad to be here with you all to share in this discussion. This is a topic that we've all been living for the last couple of years, the changing customer and how digital processes, claims digital processes can improve our interactions with today's customer. So I spent the first 20 years of my career managing claims and underwriting areas for large carriers, State Farm and AIG. I then joined an early stage startup, Slice Labs, out of Canada, spent 4 years there working on innovative products and new claims journeys. And then I joined CoverGenius as head of claims and operations. I would love to take a minute to introduce everybody to CoverGenius. In case you don't know about us, I'm really excited about what we are accomplishing. We are a global insurance company that is protecting the customers of the world's largest digital companies with embedded insurance products. Some of the partners that we work with are eBay, Wayfair, Intuit, Booking Holdings, Skyscanner, Descartes ShipRush, and Tile. Our platform is Xcover. It's our distribution platform. It's won numerous awards around the world. It handles any line of insurance or warranty business, and it includes Xclaim, which is our API for instant payments. Some quick stats that we are totally proud of. We're doing business in 60 countries. We're doing business in all 50 US states, over 40 languages. We're delivering payments in over 90 currencies to customers, and we regularly achieve NPS scores of 65 plus. So I'm excited to be here and share a lot of that with the crowd today.
Well, that's great, Seth. I don't think that I really appreciated the global, engagement that you have going on right now. Speaking of engagement and growth and digital, Andy, it's your turn.
Hi, everybody. Great to be here. I'm Andy Cohen. I'm the President and Chief Operating Officer of Snapsheet. Snapsheet is about a 10-year-old insurtech with 100% of the focus in the claims space. We work with more than 125 carriers around the world. We started off, as many people know, our first product was in the auto realm, bringing technology to a very analog process around auto damage and repair, and have scaled our business significantly to provide a cloud-native claims platform for auto, injury, property, and miscellaneous lines that we're launching with insurtechs and carriers around the globe. We're based out of Chicago, and really just happy to be here and excited to get into the panel. So thanks for having us.
Well, I smiled when you said miscellaneous, because people used to say IBM was insurance, banking, and miscellaneous. But that speaks a lot to customers and customer journeys. And the difference between insurance and banks is that while we all have the same customers and they all have assets that need risk transfer and protection, uniquely to insurance is claims and the claims journey. That promise keeping of risk transfer, that should something happen, we're here to help. So what does digital mean to your customers, and what does it increasingly mean to you as you deal with them? Seth, let's start with you, and then we'll rotate through.
Thanks, Marty. I think it's really important to cut through some of the smoke and mirrors when we talk about what is digital in today's world. Every company feels the pressure to say that their processes are digital or automated, because that's what the market is all about right now. That's what we're all working in. But in reality, many companies are not fully digital or even partially digital yet. Let me share a really quick example with you. A month ago, I had to file a claim with one of the top 3 U.S. insurers, and I went to their webpage, which said, try our new digital claim filing portal. Filled out some screens to be promptly told that my claim type was not supported by their new digital portal. I was directed to their 800 number, which again did not support my claim type. I had to send an email to a large insurance company, wait 2 weeks for a manager to call me back to intake my claim. And the manager asked me how I liked their new robotic claims intake system. Well, lots of smoke and mirrors, but let's contrast that with what CoverGenius and other companies are doing that is digital. So in the world that we're living in, we sell products with just a few clicks or data points from the customer. They can file their claim with us the same way, tell us a few data points about what happened, and your claim is filed. Our system, our X-Claim system, responds, requests documentation, helps make decisions on the claim, and when the claim is finished, an automated payment, an electronic payment goes to the customer, to their bank account, so no need for a paper check. So big contrast between what some are doing and what others are doing. I think there's a lot of benefit in being honest about capabilities.
Absolutely. And, in the old days, computers were replacing, mail and postal services. That might still be happening for some customers now today, depending on where they are in their own digital journey. But as we look at, how do you help something become manual to electronic to automated to self-serve to end-to-end digitally complete? What does that process and journey, look like for you, Andy?
Yeah, I think Seth really kind of gave a good anecdotal example of the world that Snapsheet's trying to change, right? And if you think about it, an adjuster's job has been historically largely analog, right? They're a human stapler of getting information of a claim, which is just a party of many parties, right, together. And that could be the end consumer, it could be a business, it could be a third party, it could be a repair facility, a medical facility. And so they have their inbox, they have their image box, they have their claim system, they have these all third-party services. And Snapsheets really look to take that analog process and flip it on its head and basically provide the digital experience that we get in typical B2C interactions with whatever brand you choose to shop with or do business with. And some examples of that, so Snapsheets platform allows for, in one spot, the ability for all documentation, all communications, financials, reservings, payments to all happen out of one claim platform for multiple lines of insurance. And why that's important and what that allows is for the adjuster to move away from this reactive mode of stapling information and diarying for 2 weeks later, and someone diaried Seth's email and got back to him 2 weeks later in his example, and turn it on its head and use data and the technology and workflows and rules and machine learning to make it a proactive experience. You know what exists on the claim, and the system is always listening and can automate to the next event. And in practice, going back to Seth's point, let's be honest around what's out there. And in practice, we have carriers operating across all the states in the country that are able to ingest FNOL from multiple different mechanisms, whether that's telematics, whether that's through a web app, whether that's through a native app that's the carriers, and to take that FNOL and check the fraud, confirm the coverage, set an initial reserve, gather the documentation, get an estimate back, communicate with the customer about the status along the way, to issue a payment, close the reserve, and the adjuster didn't do anything, right? So we just did all of those things and a human didn't intervene. That's an incredible digital experience. But more importantly, so if that's the happy path, when a human does need to be involved, because that's what we pay adjusters to do, which is to actually either work with customers in their moment of need. One of our core values is remember the feeling around that, because a claim is a horrible experience, is really to bring that human to intervene when it's important, whether that's the consumer calls in, they have another question, or there's something missing that won't allow the claim to go forward. And that could even just be doing their true investigation. So moving adjusters from analog staplers and this reactive mode to this proactive world of supporting customers when it's required and putting the human in the loop of that process is really what Snapsheet's claims platform does.
Well, that's great, Andy. And I think automating simplicity and solving complexity with clear communication and transparency is something that, as you get further along the 29 lines of insurance and different types of complexity, you can't automate things that you've never seen before, because the process will look very similar, but the process of a specific claim type context might be new. And Natalie, how does you've got some very sophisticated lines of business, some are kind of emerging risk like cyber. How do you walk into the virtual every day and do virtual claims with all of your virtual peers and connections?
Well, I think it comes down, as you say, Marty, to what does digital mean to us? And I think that digital means different things to different organizations depending on the types of products that we're dealing with. And one of the things that I should have mentioned earlier during my introduction but didn't is that Mosaic has actually partnered with a global tech company, and we are building out our own InsurTech platform. And what we are looking to do is to, broadly in line with what Andy was just saying, to eliminate the inefficiencies. And there are many, many inefficiencies in the claims process. So there is so much that is done manually at present. There is so much rekeying of data. There is a huge amount of inefficiency built in. And what we are looking to do, as Andy said, is to free up the adjuster's time to work on the complexities of the claim. Now, where our approach is different, I think, to Seth and Andy's, is that we are not looking to use robotics or AI to make decisions on claims. And that is really because of the nature of the claims that we're seeing. And in particular, when I look at a reps and warranties claim, we're talking about very specific facts that apply to a very specific bespoke product. And although we will be looking at using NLP to assist in the triage and the F&L process, it will require human intervention. And my belief is that the customers and the clients expect and want that human intervention, because we're essentially dealing with unstructured data and unstructured information, and we could put together, a form that asks the client to provide details of their claim, but the actual details will differ so wildly that I think it would be very, very difficult to have a robot or a machine break it down and then ask the relevant questions. And there will inevitably be questions when we're talking about our lines of business. We have to work collaboratively with our insureds on their claims. And I don't think that we want that to be done by robots, and I don't think that they do either. So yes, absolutely. In terms of the kind of the back end, the processing, the admin, the reserving, the payments, everything else, we are looking to make all of that digital. But the technical claims handling and the decision making will be made by myself and my team.
Well, in 30 years of working in healthcare and insurance, I've never met an adjuster that wanted to do more data entry. I've never met an underwriter that wanted to have to go through yet another spreadsheet to find yet another schedule to type in by hand. And I've never met a customer that wanted to wait longer to be heard about their claim story or to get a final payment or an initial payment even. So, the idea of being timely and taking out inefficiencies is, I think, good for everybody, inside and outside the organization. But when it comes to automation, I'll flip around the speaking order a little bit, and I'll go back to you right now, Natalie, and say, should everything be?
No. I think, when we talk about everything, I think it tends to assume that the claims journey, if we can call it that, starts with the filing of a notice and ends with the settlement and payment of a claim. But I think certainly for us, and again, kind of with a focus on our specialty world, our the product that we sell and the claim service that we provide is very much based on relationships. And we rely on those relationships when it comes to claims. So, for example, our clients will sometimes want pre-loss advice. A lot of the difficulties that can arise when it comes to the handling of claims is because the clients don't know in advance of a claim, when do I notify? What do I notify? What will happen then? So part of our role is to educate. And so when you're talking about can the whole process be, or should it be, automated? No, I think that is a service that needs to be provided by a human. I think that the relationship building is absolutely fundamental. And again, post-loss, there is advice and there are services that we can provide. In terms of the process between notification and closure of a claim, again, I don't think that we would want to automate everything. Again, it goes back to relationships. And I think particularly when you're looking at specialty claims, there is so much that is nuanced. There is so much variety, there is so much complexity, and there are often many grey areas. And resolving those requires an element of common sense. Sometimes there are ambiguities. So it requires somebody to exercise common sense and often some commerciality as well. Again, taking into account the nature of the relationship with the customer and the claim and everything else. And so I don't think that we should be looking to have the process fully automated. And as I've said previously, and I'll say again, I don't think that it benefits the customer. I think that what we need to look at when we're talking about automation is where kind of efficiency and customer satisfaction and service overlap. So sometimes you may get efficiency, but at the cost of actual customer satisfaction and what the customer wants. You may also have, something that the customer wants that is totally inefficient, but I think you need to find that overlap. And that's where I think that we should be looking to automate. So again, if we're automating our back-end processes, the customer benefits, things are done quicker. But I think when it comes to communication and relationship building, no, I think the human touch is required.
So I'll look at Seth and Andy, and I think we'll go with Andy first. But the piece of no claim deserves the old way of doing business. Might be something that every technologist and every kind of innovator, likes to think that they're going to help solve. Of course, things that people prefer to do the old way because it's the best way for them, or it's maybe the best way for the situation, as Natalie pointed out, that'll continue. But Andy, when you look at your customers and how they engage with your platform and your technologies, how does that robots when you want them, people when you don't, kind of play out?
Yeah, I mean, look, and the reality is there's not like magic dust that we can sprinkle and automate the repair of my house or Seth's house after after a water leak, or automating the repair of a car, right? So it's not, the question isn't automated or human, or one's better and one's worse. That's just not the right question. It's more the question of there's not, or the reality of there's no less efficient part of the insurance value chain than claims, right? It is the least efficient part of the entire process. And I've worked across, underwriting, distribution, operations, claims my entire career at, major companies, and work with more than 100 carriers today. So so it's really about the things that we're doing that require claims organizations to be hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of people. That's what we're going after. And I'll give you a couple of examples. In our platform today, the carriers that use our platform about 6 to 9 months in get to about 50% of all communications out of the platform are automated. That could be regulatory required notifications. That could be text message updates. That could be, assignments that get sent to a third-party repair vendor, and, whether it's a water damage or whether it's a repair shop. Like, that's work that is an adjuster today typing up an email, wordsmithing an email, or fat fingering the wrong number into an email. Like, that's a perfect example of something in the claims process that can be automated, but it has to be templated in the way that matches the brand of the company, and that's got to be very flexible and configurable, as well as what's required and needed from a regulatory perspective. Think policy language in a particular jurisdiction, Florida property as an example. And so, it's not about ones and zeros and everything should be automated and everything shouldn't. There's so much that is on the ground that you can pick up, fruit that you can pick up that can be automated, that just starting there gives the adjuster more time, gets more efficiency, allows the adjuster to spend more time investigating the loss, not just supporting the customer, but understanding if there's coverage, determining liability. That's really critical, and that leads to better claims outcomes on the indemnity down the road, right? And so that's kind of one example of the automation in action. I think the other thing is companies have hundreds of people whose job is to dispatch work. That doesn't make sense. A work assignment is based on skill, availability, licensing, a number of things. These are rules. They can be complex, but having the ability to dispatch the right work to the right people, whether it's a system, whether it's a human, whether it's a more advanced technical expert, those are things that don't require operations teams and claim ops teams and support teams and offshore vendors to do. And so I guess the last point is, when we think about digitizing the claims process and the future claims journey, it always starts with the customer. But the impact is on the claims operating model and change managing the way we've always done it to a way when you don't need to do these things. And that even includes documenting the file with claim notes that can be automatically driven out of the system.
I'll add two.
I'm going to say, Seth, I'll let you, I want to hear your point of view, Seth, around, what do you do with old thin files? And, how do you make better fat files for digital experiences?
Well, I think what's key here is that we've got more data than we ever had in the past, right? We've got digital data points that we never used in past old paper files. So as an example, I'll put out with our platform, Xcover, we have a fraud score built in. So the adjuster doesn't have to dig through questions and papers to figure out if a claim might be fraudulent, our system is already looking at all the data points, digital timestamps, names, events, and it's coming up with a score to give the adjuster a quick indicator that might point them down the road to handle that claim faster, better, easier. So yeah, using the data, using today's data. I just wanted to hit one quick thing that Natalie mentioned. The question was about, should everything be automated? And Natalie hit it just right. Our customers are humans, they're not machines. And even though we're building great things that save everybody time and money, there are times when humans need help, right? So we build into every program of ours off-ramps, ways that they can contact us if they need to. And we have a help center. We have a robust help center where they can find articles and answers to their questions. So we don't forget the human element, even though we're building largely or wholly digital programs here.
Yeah, and these aren't intergalactic spaceships, right, that just automatically fly themselves, right? The reality is the technology, like what we provide, what Snapsheet provides, allows carriers to test and adjust and learn and iterate on the hour, on the day, as opposed to waiting for like a small technology project or an IT project that takes 4 or 5 months to implement that. And that's critical, because if we all sat in a room and designed the ideal claims process for one of Seth's customers or one of Natalie's customers, we get it wrong the first day, the second day, the third day, until we get enough through it, and then you start to build those patterns. And so having the technology like Snapsheet's claim platform and Snapsheet's products is really about giving the power to the carrier to configure new workflows, new automations on their own time, so that you can test and adjust, because that's the biggest challenge that we've all dealt with historically in the companies that we came from, is you set the system up and it's set, and then you have to invest all this money to change it so it never gets changed, and you build these workarounds. Well, new technology, that making it cloud native, having updates in real time and not being offline for maintenance allows you to make change. Building configuration allows you to actually get it wrong and not be the end of the world, which means you can implement claims platforms, products, customer, tests faster. And that's how you learn. That's what, consumer companies do. That's what, SaaS companies do.
So I'll take a word out of some of the key things I heard you say: updates, feedback, collaborate, communicate, learning. Those are things that I think everyone sees as benefits of being more digital, because you've got data, and you could say, I know what client-centric and a good journey looks like because I've seen one before, and this one doesn't look like that. They should have someone step in and have that off-ramp. So I think you can be really smart about this. But as we talk about the benefits and potential pitfalls of being digital, let's get a point-counterpoint. Natalie, we'll start with a counterpoint. What's a negative of being digital and having all that data out there?
I don't think they're negative. I wouldn't describe them as negatives. I think that there are, for all of the reasons that we've just described, being digital in the right ways is absolutely is a positive. And one thing, actually, sorry to not answer your question, but I just wanted to touch on is that I can't remember whether it was Andy or Seth that mentioned it, but we're obviously at the moment primarily talking about kind of automating processes and workflow, etc. But somebody did touch on just the impact of collecting the data, which is so fundamental and has to be a fundamental part of building any kind of robotics or AI, but also is just part of a feedback loop, because again, claims doesn't operate in a silo. We are part of, I am part of an underwriting agency. So my underwriters need to know what's happening on the claims side, not just in terms of how many claims, and how much is being paid, but where are those claims coming from, and where are the trends that we see? And are there any ambiguities in our wording? And the data that we collate from robotics and AI is hugely fundamental. I do think it has to be augmented by the claims adjusters, who can talk more to the nuances of the specific claim. But I mean, that's certainly one of the advantages. In terms of, I'd call them just maybe things, traps for the unwary, I suppose. The more data you're collecting, and with it all being in the cloud, there are just potential pitfalls around, I think it's been touched on already, it was certainly touched on in the earlier panel, privacy, confidentiality, how you protect the information that you are gathering, potential vulnerabilities. I think as well a potential pitfall is rushing into things, I suppose. For want of a better word, as Seth and Andy have said, I think at the moment, everybody's saying, oh, we must go digital, we must go digital. And I think sometimes there is maybe a rush to get there too quickly, because your systems will only be as good as the data that backs them up. And it takes time to collate that data and information, to test it. So I think it's really about making sure that what you're using works and not just that it's there. And it's exactly to Seth's point earlier about, there was this system that was there, but it didn't fundamentally do what it was supposed to. So
let me go with the, run fast and break things, but not my things, especially if it's your claims department. And I'll say, Seth, you come from a world where this more connected data, more signal, more information about where was the phone when it was being used to take a picture. Did the person actually, could you see them walking around their property, when they were doing the inspection? Did you have full end-to-end, kind of fraud happy pathing that, there was continuous and contiguous information from a trusted source? How do you look at the benefits of making someone who's following all the rules move faster through the system?
I think first off, you have to start off with basic claim handling, right? Even though things are being automated, we're still investigating, negotiating, and settling files the way we've been doing for decades. We're just doing it in a different manner. So to your question there about today's customer, we're intaking that information and we're just doing those steps quicker and more efficiently. A key thing that I wanted to mention in this topic of dangers or cautions to companies that are automating, we haven't mentioned the C word yet, compliance. So you've got each of the 50 U.S. states, with their own insurance regulations. You've got the FCA in the UK. You've got numerous other countries with insurance regulations. And here we are building systems that need to meet all of those regulations while selling products and handling claims faster and more efficiently. So I think it's crucial for any company going down this path of automating and digitizing to include the right people at the table, experienced claims people, your actuaries, a robust compliance team, and real leadership decision makers who can make sure that a product is going to be compliant, even though it's going to be quicker.
Well, so we talked a little about changing regulators, changing jurisdictions, changing rules and laws. And I think that the pace of those changes, whether it's you can't use facial recognition or you can for some things, you can't use this biometric, someone has to stay opted in for you to be done. That's all about changing how you use the process. But Andy, what about the changing customer expectations? Because now that they're so connected, and they can do things at home and they come to work and it's harder to do them, and then they deal with an insurance claim and it's almost impossible, like Seth was saying, to do everyday tasks now, with manual or analog systems. How are the customers changing? One, are they ready? And two, what do they expect?
Well, I'll start with what do they expect. I guess one of our board members, someone I respect a lot, always says that the customer's expectation of your company, so an insurance carrier in our example, matches their last best customer experience from whatever business they were a customer of. So pick whatever brand that you want to pick that you shop at or whatever. And so that's the expectation. So are customers changing? Absolutely. Carriers are changing too. Let's give the industry some credit, right? And it's not just the insurtechs, right? Everyone's trying to do this right, trying to figure this out. Most of the legacy processes and claims were built on an operating model of what that company was focused on at the time. And it's kind of been the status quo ever since. So the shift is really shifting that operating model, which was largely analog, in person, go to your house, go to your car, or or have you go to a body shop, to do it in a way that the customer wants. And I don't think that anyone's got that down right. I think everyone's experimenting and people are doing some amazing things around that. But what I would say, and I think this is really important, is the biggest danger is assuming that you actually know what your customers want. We opened this panel talking about how complex a claim is, and that's why you can't automate it and things like that, because claim is a claim of many parties and there's infinite complexity, and not every claim is kind of special. Every claim is special and it's unique in its own right. So, but if you don't try to do things differently, if you try to go, oh, we're going to predict the method of which this goes down, that's really something that off-puts the customer, right? Like, and I'll give you a payments example of this. We've taught our carriers that we work with for payments and reserving products to just ask the customer, do you want to get paid fast or slow? That's the fastest way to drive digital adoption of ACH or real-time payments versus check. If the adjuster just asked for that, and I had 2 water claims this year with a great insurer, they still can't pay me digitally. 90% of the time, an insurance claim we pay out via check. That's insane. What customer wants a check? And if it's over whatever amount, you have to go to a bank to physically cash it. So that's an example of what the customers expect. And I guess I'll answer the danger question as well, which is truly the danger is assuming your current processes are actual customer focused, when the reality it's where you have your resources based, or it's your hours of operation. You know, why are insurance carriers F&OL hours 9 to 6, right? When do most F&OLs happen? At night, right? When you actually aren't at work and you have all your information. You're not dealing with that right away. And so that's where we need to really shift, right? Like
I think it's really important to pull back and take a look at a snapshot of today's consumer. We can order a ride share and have it at our feet in a few minutes. We can dial up Amazon on our computers and have something on our doorstep the next day. Folks want insurance and banking products delivered in the same way. We literally have millions of global customers that are buying in this way from us at Cover Genius. Not only are they pushing the buttons and buying the products digitally, but they're handling their claims the same way. And it's just the way of the world right now. Think about the pandemic. How many folks do you know who moved away to live somewhere else to live out the pandemic or to try a different city? People are more global. They're using their devices way more than they ever did. Some really quick stats in this changing customer category. 40% of the U.S. workforce has some tie to the gig economy. So most people are not working your regular 9 to 5 anymore, or they have a side hustle. So their insurance needs and their banking needs might be different than they were 5 years ago. 80% of global insurance companies recognize that their income is at risk due to insurtechs and these new products and the way they're sold. And we did a study on payments a year ago, and 60% of customers reported that they would prefer to buy insurance from an online retailer during a purchase than to have to search it out separately from a different source. So again, ammunition that people are buying this way and are getting more comfortable buying this way.
Yeah, I think as well, sorry, I've just seen that there's a question that has come in, which I do think is quite pertinent to what we're talking about now, but which is how do you balance working with consumers who want a more digitized correspondence versus a more personal experience, which I think is really at the heart of what we're all debating. And I'm not sure that we necessarily have the complete answer, but I think and Andy referenced the need to know what it is and to understand what it is your customers want. And I do think, particularly from my experience at Aon, actually, where I shifted from working in claims for a carrier to working in claims for a broker. And one of the things that I realized is that I thought that I knew before I worked at Aon what the customer wanted. But actually, when I was then representing the customer in that claims journey, it was a whole different ballgame. And actually, the things that I thought were important to them as a carrier were not the things that were important to them when it came down to actually having their claims handled. And so I think, yes, we need to know what the customer wants. I think we also need to recognize that not all customers want the same thing. And how do you balance that? I think they do want speed, and I think that they do want efficiency. We all do, absolutely. Everything takes far longer than it needs to at the moment. But I think that in my experience, as I've had a large house fire last year, so I've made a claim on my insurance. I have worked at a broker and insurer and a law firm. And I do think that all of it comes down to communication.
Yeah.
And how you structure that communication. There will be parts of the claims process where something automated works. Have you received my claim? An automated response, I have received your claim. That gives the client what they want. Who is handling my claim? Again, that could be something that is automated. When can I expect to hear from you? That is something that can be automated. But the question of, are you going to pay my
all of those things are like, like those are things that are like table stakes. They should be.
Again, and I recognize that, but my point is, the question was, what about, the customers that want a more digitized correspondence? How do you balance that with the personal? And it's about recognizing when they want the personal. Now, I think that if you're delivering bad news, for example, about a claim not being covered, that should come from a human being rather than a machine. And if you're trying to explain why a loss isn't covered, again, it will depend on the product and it will depend on the customer. But again, that is something that should be delivered by a human. But there is much in the cycle. So it's about recognizing actually that the products that you're selling and the people that you're dealing with are individuals with individual needs that can't all neatly be packaged into a box. And Andy, you look like you disagree with me.
Well, it's not that I disagree. I just think that I think that it's not following, like, the reality is where we're going doesn't follow the historical path. Customers have sign up like for a product that maybe doesn't have any personal interaction. So even if they want it, that's what they're paying for, is that brand, and the brand.
Absolutely. And this is where I think this is where the difference in the different lines of business really comes to the fore. So for example, with all of the lines of business that we are dealing with, there is a broker involved. There is a high technical barrier to entry, and we're not a direct to consumer insurer. Our customers are coming to us through brokers, and we are having conversations about the complexities of their risks, and each risk is very individual. It isn't a kind of a plug and play. So I absolutely agree that there are 100%. When I had my house fire, it happened on a Friday evening. I couldn't speak to anybody until Monday morning, and then I had to do it on the telephone, and then they sent me something in paper, and then I had to verify it, and the whole thing was a nightmare and completely unnecessary. So that I absolutely agree, but I do think it depends. I absolutely do think it depends on the product and the customer, and also that different customers buying the same product may want different things. So I think, there does have to be an element of personal.
And just real quick, and in the claims process, it's actually the perfect process, because all claims start with a first notice of loss, whether it's digital or human. And one of the basic questions is, how do you want to be communicated with? And so whether that's text, whether that's email, whether that's phone, depending on your company, like our platform gives the ability for the company to configure it however which way they want. So subsequent communications can come through multiple channels. The reality is, I as a customer, you as a customer, Natalie, Seth as a customer, at different points in the life cycle of the claim, you may switch, right? And so the ability to channel hop, the ability to be omni-channel is a table stakes, right? But there's also brands out there, and Seth, you do embedded insurance, so maybe want to hear from you, right? Where there probably isn't a phone number sometimes for this, because that's the pact that you're selling, right? And so it does also matter, like that business model. You pay less and you get what you get, and that's kind of
But what I think we're all coming around to, and I see a second question up on the chat board there about customer expectations on different claim types. We're coming around to the discussion that this is all new territory. We didn't sell insurance this way or handle claims a few years ago in this manner. So companies like ours that are developing these digital journeys are constantly tweaking them. We're learning, we're making them better as we go along the way. Do you use a chatbot in a certain product? Do you give an email off ramp? Do you need a phone number for certain product types? It all depends on the program, but key is clear and easy terms of use, terms and conditions, a very clear and easy to understand customer journey. The customer has to understand what they're buying. Is it insurance? Is it a warranty? Is it a benefit? If a customer in today's world is unhappy with the experience and can't get the answers they need, Another key word here, social media. That's where they're going to go. So it behooves all of us to think before we build, to build it right as close as we can, and then to tweak it along the way.
So one of the milestones we had in the build up to this panel was advice to other companies, for their journey. And I keep hearing, listen to your customer, ask them their preferences. There is that, one of the pieces I'm getting out of this is that if I ask you your preference and you tell me, then it's my responsibility to listen and actually do that next time I interact with you. How are systems and companies prepared to actually listen to what Andy says and do that the way he asked them to on the next interaction? Seth, I'll let you have that one.
So the worst case scenario is building a product or a process that has zero value or relevance to the customer. Either they're not going to buy the product, or they're not going to file their claim using your forms, and they're going to ask to speak to somebody. So one way that we look at to avoid that is to survey potential audiences before you build a product or a process. Would you buy a product that includes X, Y, and Z? What is important to you as a gig worker, let's say, as far as coverage? So putting it out there, getting the learnings before you build, and then after you built your MPV, putting it out there again. Is this a product that holds value for you? Would this process work for you in the world that you live in today?
So test and learn and learn and learn.
Well,
yeah. Andy, what about you? Do you actually watch your processes and see your innovations and customers don't use them and you go, what did I miss?
Yeah, I mean, look, unfortunately, our founder Brad had an auto claim with one of our customers, and so you got to watch our own system all the way through, and so that's an accidental way of getting feedback on a claim system, but we won't go down that path today. And look, I think I'm all out of the advice game. I left consulting a long time ago. I think that the carriers are really, really smart, well-run operations. And so the way that I think about it is just maybe giving a question and it's a question we ask a lot as we learn and get to know our customers, which is, how are you doing this today? Why are you doing it that way today? And what are you doing with the information that you're collecting in this way? We're making the customer, we have 5 levels of severity for this injury claim. Okay, why not 3? Why not 6? Does it feed downstream differently? Is that a predictor to your workflows? As you think about modern technology and modernizing the claims journey, the systems are going to get a lot more flexible. They're going to be a lot more user configurable. Doing it the way you've always done it may make a ton of sense, because if your results are great, you want to keep those results, but there's a way to do it with better customer experience. There's a way to do it with a better adjuster experience. There's a way to do it to get better vendors, a better vendor experience when you need a third party involved in your process. And I think really looking at why are we doing it that way, and usually the answers to those whys come down to some sort of legacy system implementation or some sort of third-party system implementation, and that's actually the root cause of the why, or it's just the hard change management where it literally, thousands of people, it can take years to change it, and no one wants to do it. So I don't have the advice necessarily as to what people should do, but my advice would be to ask questions and really be focused on those answers. Because if you don't have a good reason, or it's the way we've always done it, then stop doing it. Do it different. And even though it's a regulated, world that we live in, most of the stuff we do, we hide behind compliance, and it is actually not.
So nobody regulates empathy, but everybody gets a consumer complaint when they're, deemed unempathetic. Question from the audience, can you automate empathy? And I'm a fan of saying that, respecting my time is empathetic. Letting me report my claim when I see it is empathetic, not waiting till Monday morning, Natalie, to report I had a house fire. There's leaving me in the lurch, not telling me what's happening, not communicating, not following through on you asked me my preference and I told you, and then you don't follow through. or not being flexible to change when I change. Like, for this, I like a text. For that, I want a phone call. For this, I want I want something physical. I want to file it someplace.
Maybe
those things are fluid.
And maybe just real quick, you can't automate empathy. You can't, right? Like that's not, but what you can do is automate all the other crap that your adjusters are doing so they actually have time to provide empathy. And I'll just shut up because like reality is I don't think your adjusters today are doing, and F&O reps are actually doing what you think they're doing because of their caseloads and because of their garbage processes and systems.
So one of the things I've heard over and over again in my years in claims is that the customer has the life, and this is creating friction with that. How does that enter into the empathy or things that shouldn't be automated, Natalie? Is there a listen to the broker, listen to the customer, understand what else is going on in the context of a claim? How do you make that better? At the same time, let them be more digital if they want to. And then now, literally, we're going to go to Seth, and then I think we're heading into kind of the closing parts of this.
I think that when it comes to some of these questions, the answer is maybe you can't do all of these things. As Andy said, you can't automate empathy. I think what you have to do is identify what kind of claim service and what kind of claims team you want to provide, and build around that essentially. So you may want to automate as much as you possibly can because it's cheaper and it's more efficient and it's quicker. Or you may want to build in a more personal service where it's appropriate to do so, but in the knowledge and understanding that might mean that things take a little longer. I think again, I think you've got to identify. You can't just go digital because that's what everybody's doing. There needs to be a purpose to it, and I think again, Andy spoke to this. Why are we doing what we are doing? And we absolutely have reasons. We are building an InsurTech platform, 100%. There is so much that we plan to do with that platform, but we do not intend to do it at the expense of personal and empathetic customer service. That will always be at the heart of what we deliver and what we provide. We're lucky we don't have a legacy system. We're not building on a legacy system. So we get to choose right now what we want to do. And, so we're very fortunate, but the customer does, we're talking about, this is all about transparency and loyalty. And as Seth said, your customers will go elsewhere. You can notify a claim and pay it tomorrow, but if it's not the amount that they wanted, or for some reason they are unhappy, they will still go somewhere else. So it's about absolutely getting that balance right.
I'll throw something interesting on the table. At Cover Genius, we work across a lot of different verticals, not just one product type. We do travel, we do logistics, shipping, retail, events, insurance, all different things. I keep a desktop folder on my computer of happy customer stories. And across all of those verticals, is every customer happy? Not 100%, but every day of the week, I see a customer comment on a different vertical for Cover Genius saying, great product, I like this experience, and I put them into my electronic folder to keep them. So I think, to me, that's a statement that you can build empathy in to these processes and get good result at the end of the day, but it takes a lot of work.
So I like the idea that, and I think I said it when we were talking about this, is that insurance is sold, but they buy claims. Is that fulfillment process, that set of expenses that is, your brand from someone else's. And as Andy was saying, the tools are here for smart carriers to construct claim experiences that, make it easier for their employees, for their brokers, for their vendors, for their customers, ultimately for sure. What is the key to new tools, or are there any new tools that are really making this whole process of connecting the data, understanding preferences and feedback, and being more efficient around creating satisfaction for customers? I'll start with you, Seth, because you just said you got a whole list of things that people like in their experiences. Did you intend to do those, or are those just lucky?
I think the industry has gone in a direction over the last couple of years, right? So many carriers are using things like photo and video upload for their customers. Customers love that. Somebody doesn't have to come out to their home or business. They can hold up their smartphone and show damage.
Like TikTok.
Yeah. You've got digital payments being used around the world. Great time saver, no longer waiting for a paper check. Just the purchase alone, a couple of clicks and you've got a product, or a couple of clicks and you filed your claim. Huge wins for customers and insurance companies. But I think with innovation, some of the things that stand out to me are some of the new product types. So for instance, we do a product with Ola, a rideshare company in Australia and New Zealand that pays the rider if their ride is X number of minutes late or if they miss a flight. We do a product with a company called Tile that is a tracking device that warranties an expensive personal property item from getting lost because you've attached the tracking device to it. All of these things are new economy, new market things that I think make life better for the insurance customer.
Andy, it's your turn.
Yeah,
what are the new tools that are helping people be more satisfied?
Oh, look, there's tons of them. I think it differs by line of insurance. I think there's the old tools that aren't being adopted as well, which is just rules and workflow and, communication tools that are built in. But I guess the way that I think about it is, Natalie said it really well, the new carriers have a huge advantage because they're not encumbered by legacy. And that means that they get to build in an iterative way, right? And that means they get to improve every day, every week, every month, every quarter, every year, right? And I think one of the pitfalls that we see other carriers go into in claims is they've got a lot of customers, a lot of success, a legacy environment, however old it is, 5, 10, 20 years, and they forget how long they've had that environment and how much money they've spent to build that environment over the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And so when they go to the new environment, they say, oh, we want everything that's in our old environment plus all these new things. And they actually over-index on the old stuff that they have that they may not have day one in the new place, when the reality is they want to move off the old environment because it's not getting it done. And they're not indexing, more on some of these new features and technology products that are in there. And so I think it's like, Rome wasn't built in a day. So knowing that it's not this one step, previously these implementations of claims were a big transformation over 2 years and you're done, and then you've transformed. And it's like, that's not the world anymore. And so, it needs to be more iterative. Ian Thompson was on earlier. He talks about it as like bite-sized things, but it needs to be much more iterative. And what do you need day one that can showcase this new stuff, and picking pockets of your organization that'll adopt it. And then, because look, adjusters' jobs are really challenging. They're going to complain about the change. That's just a fact. Anyone who's worked with adjusters knows that. The technology can be an advantage to them. Even the best technology that you switch to, they'll still complain because of the change management hurdle. But it's not about like what is the feature or what is the tool. There's millions of tools. All the carriers know. The insurtechs have been really good at advertising, branding them, and putting good PR around them. So I'm not going to weigh the differences of those. It's really about knowing that it's a journey, and that your previous 20 years wasn't built in 3 months. So why should your next 20 years be built in 3 months?
Okay, so Helen is getting ready, but we got a minute left. And so I'm going to give the last word to Natalie. And I'll say, Natalie, congratulations. You have no legacy conditions that say you can't do this or you must do that. Next year, you'll probably have a little bit of a legacy unless you've been able to stay iterative like Andy was saying or Seth has been saying. What's the one thing that you would tell your dev team and every other company out there listening in this next job? I've got nothing but green on me. What's the would next year because you should have automated that, or you should have digitized that, or you should have, what would be your regret list? I guess that's the last question. Talking to your junior self, I wish I would have done this differently. Any idea hit you?
You were breaking up, but I think it follows on from what Andy was just saying, and I am very conscious of time, but it's just around visibility and transparency, which is what we're talking about here. I do ultimately think that we will have satisfied customers if they have that visibility and transparency. So when we're talking about new tools, for example, tools that allow the customer to get access to claims information in real time is absolutely going to be fundamental, I think, and not just for customers, but for brokers and for other carriers and reinsurers and everybody. So I think I'll finish on that very quickly.
Well, that was a great way to finish. We'd like to give this back to you, and thank you, audience, for everything. Send your questions in, and the panelists will be able to get them directly. We look forward to seeing you online again. Thanks, Helen.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Marty, Natalie, Andrew, and Steph. What a great panel. Loads of audience questions. Really appreciate the time you took to prepare that and to come and speak today. Thank you. So we're going to have a quick break now. If you're unlike me and you're in the US or Canada, it's probably time for some lunch. I'm going to be getting another cup of coffee and getting prepared for the next couple of sessions ahead. So I'll see you back here after the break. See you then.